At 2:00 a.m. on April 3, 2024, 5-year-old Isabella Loving took her last breath. Her parents, Nicholas and Andrea Loving, knew she was gone. They knew their daughter had died from a combination of starvation, dehydration, bacterial pneumonia, and the brutal beatings they had inflicted on her for years. But they didn't call 911. Instead, they spent the next 5 hours discussing their options. Should they bury her in the backyard and run to Virginia? Should they hide her body? How could they avoid losing the rest of their children? Let this sink in. When they finally called for help at 6:55 a.m., nearly 5 hours after Isabella died, first responders immediately knew this was no accident. This 5-year-old girl showed signs of systematic torture, severe malnutrition, bruising in various stages of healing, injuries to her genitals, evidence that she'd been locked in a makeshift closet while her siblings slept in queen-sized beds. And here's what makes this case even more devastating. Child Protective Services had a recent case on this family. Community members had made reports. A local therapist had filed multiple complaints. Isabella's own father had a prior conviction for child abuse. The system knew about this family, and the system closed the case. April 3, 2024, 6:55 a.m., 17391 Crystal Canyon Boulevard, Cold Springs, Nevada. Washoe County Emergency Dispatch receives a call. 5-year-old child, unresponsive, not breathing. Deputies from the Washoe County Sheriff's Office arrive within minutes, along with Truckee Meadows Fire and REMSA paramedics. They rush upstairs to find Isabella Loving lying on a tiny mattress with no bed frame. Her body is cold to the touch. Despite immediate life-saving efforts, Isabella is pronounced dead at 7:22 a.m., just 27 minutes after the 911 call. But within seconds of examining this little girl, first responders know something is catastrophically wrong. According to court documents, emergency medical personnel observed what they described as a lot of signs of trauma. Let me read directly from the probable cause affidavit. Oral trauma, apparent bruising on her face, pelvis, hips, the insides of both biceps, and on her genitals. Multiple bruises, cuts, scrapes to her arms, legs, torso, and face, which included a black eye and a gash over her other eye. This wasn't a sick child who passed away in her sleep. This was a child whose body told a story of prolonged, systematic abuse. Deputies immediately secured the scene and called in detectives from the Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit. Living in the home, Nicholas Loving, age 35, father Andrea Loving, age 35, mother 4 children, including Isabella's 3 siblings. Both parents were present when first responders arrived, and both parents had explanations ready. Nicholas told deputies that Isabella had been sick, that she'd been coughing up blood and mucus for 9 to 10 days. He said they were waiting for the 12-day mark to take her to a doctor. Andrea corroborated this story. Isabella had been clumsy, they said. She'd fallen out of Nicholas's Ford pickup truck twice. She'd been hit with a plastic baseball bat by one of the other children. She'd fallen down the stairs. Accidents. Just a series of unfortunate accidents. But detectives weren't buying it. The pattern of injuries didn't match falls or accidents. The extent of the trauma suggested repeated, intentional violence over an extended period. And then investigators discovered something that made this case even more disturbing. Both parents told deputies on scene that they had recently had a Child Protective Services case against them, and that case had been closed. According to court documents, quote, both parents pointed to a recent Child Protective Services case against them, saying it was closed, and they were concerned police on scene might call CPS for this. Let that statement hang. Think about that. Their daughter had just died. First responders were examining her battered body. And Nicholas and Andrea Loving's primary concern was that this might reopen their CPS case. As detectives processed the scene, they made a discovery that would become central to the murder charges. In the bedroom where Isabella died, investigators found what they described as a crudely built cubby closet structure, approximately 5 feet by 5 feet, with a door and locking hatch. This wasn't a play structure. This wasn't a reading nook. This was Isabella's prison. According to Nicholas Loving's own admission to police, he locked Isabella inside this tiny cubby. Meanwhile, her two siblings in the same room each had queen-sized beds. Court documents reveal that Isabella was routinely isolated in this closet as punishment. The door had a locking mechanism. She couldn't get out on her own. While the rest of the family ate meals together, Isabella was locked away, often denied food entirely. And we know this because investigators recovered text messages from Andrea Loving's phone. These messages show Andrea repeatedly asking Nicholas for permission to feed their daughter. Most of the time, his answer was no. When Isabella was allowed to eat, she received a single piece of bread while the rest of the family had regular meals. Let this register. But the isolation and starvation were only part of Isabella's nightmare. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered evidence of sustained, brutal physical abuse. According to Andrea's statement to detectives, and remember, this is the mother speaking, Nicholas Loving beat Isabella more times than she could count over a 2-year period. Let me share what Andrea told investigators directly from court documents. Andrea told police that on more than one occasion she had witnessed Nicholas kick Isabella while wearing what she believed to be steel-toe boots or cowboy boots. Steel-toe boots. Kicking a 5-year-old child. A few weeks before Isabella died, Andrea witnessed Nicholas kick her daughter between 10 and 20 times. 2 days before Isabella's death, Andrea saw Nicholas kick Isabella in multiple places on her body, including her genitals. She also witnessed him grab Isabella by the hood or collar of her sweatshirt and drag her up the stairs, Isabella's body and head striking each step as they went. When they reached the top, Andrea heard Nicholas yelling. Then she heard a loud thud, the sound of Isabella's head being thrown against the wall. Andrea Loving witnessed all of this, and she did nothing. Now I want to show you something that prosecutors believe proves Andrea Loving's murder charge. As Isabella's condition deteriorated, as this 5-year-old girl was literally dying, Andrea Loving didn't call 911. She Googled. Court documents reveal Andrea conducted these searches on her phone. Signs my child is dying. My 5-year-old is peeing blood. How long can you go without food? Dark blood on boil when popping? Kidneys failing. Let's break down what this evidence tells us. Andrea knew Isabella was dying. She knew her daughter was experiencing kidney failure. She knew Isabella was so malnourished she could barely function. She knew there was blood in her urine, a sign of severe internal trauma. But instead of rushing Isabella to an emergency room, Andrea researched symptoms online and went back to her life. Because here's what Andrea later admitted to investigators. She feared that if she took Isabella to a hospital, medical staff would see the bruises, the malnutrition, the signs of abuse, and they would report the family to authorities. According to Andrea's own statement, she could have taken Isabella for medical treatment on several occasions. She should have, but she didn't, because she was afraid of being turned into police. Andrea Loving chose her own freedom over her daughter's life. And court documents reveal Isabella hadn't seen a doctor since October 2022, more than a year and a half before her death. But the medical neglect was deliberate for another reason too. Isabella had been pulled from school for an entire year before she died. Why? According to court documents, her parents removed her from school specifically so no one would see her bruises. No teachers to notice she was losing weight. No counselors to ask why she flinched when adults raised their voices. No mandatory reporters to call CPS. Isabella was systematically hidden from the world. And her siblings knew it too. Court documents reveal that after Isabella died, Andrea instructed the other children to lie to police. She told them to say Isabella's injuries came from one of them, not from their parents. She told them not to mention the storage closet where Isabella was kept. These children, who had just lost their sister, were weaponized to cover up her murder. At this point, you might be asking, how did this man have custody of children? Because here's what investigators discovered. Nicholas Loving had done this before. In October 2013, 11 years before Isabella's death, Nicholas Loving was arrested and charged with child abuse or neglect, causing substantial bodily harm. The victim? His then-girlfriend's 2-year-old son. The child was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries. Nicholas was initially charged with 2 counts of child abuse and 1 count of domestic battery. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of child abuse causing substantial bodily harm. The sentence, 36 to 96 months, suspended prison time with 60 months probation. That means Nicholas Loving could have served up to 8 years in prison. But his sentence was suspended, meaning if he successfully completed probation, he wouldn't serve any prison time at all. And that's exactly what happened. According to court records, Nicholas Loving's defense attorney argued for leniency, saying Nicholas felt genuinely remorseful, was gainfully employed, and had a good support system. The court agreed. Nicholas Loving completed his 60-month probation without violation. He never spent a single day in prison for abusing a 2-year-old child. So in 2024, when 5-year-old Isabella Loving showed up dead, with injuries consistent with prolonged abuse, detectives already knew something critical. Nicholas Loving was a previously convicted child abuser who had been given a second chance, and he used that second chance to torture and kill his own daughter. Now let's talk about what happened in those critical hours after Isabella died. Because this is where prosecutors believe they can prove first-degree murder for both parents. Here's the timeline according to court documents. 2 East a.m. Andrea Loving discovers Isabella is unresponsive, not breathing, cold to the touch. 2 a.m. to 6:55 a.m. Nicholas and Andrea discuss their options. 6:55 a.m. Parents finally call 911. 7:22 a.m. Isabella is pronounced dead. Isabella had been dead for nearly 5 hours before her parents called for help. What were they doing during that time? According to Andrea's statement to investigators, they were having a conversation about how to avoid getting caught. Andrea told detectives that Nicholas wanted to bury Isabella's body in the backyard and flee to his parents' home in Virginia. Andrea talked him out of it, not because it was morally wrong, but because, quote, "We can't leave it here. It'll rot." Nicholas's reasoning for not calling 911 immediately? According to court documents, "I don't want to lose my family." Let's be clear about what this means legally. This wasn't panic. This wasn't shock. This wasn't a grieving parent making irrational decisions in the immediate aftermath of tragedy. This was deliberate planning, conspiracy, cover-up. For 5 hours, Nicholas and Andrea Loving discussed how to avoid accountability for their daughter's death, while her body grew colder upstairs. And when they finally did call 911, they had their story ready. Isabella had been sick, they said, coughing up blood for 9 or 10 days. They were waiting to see if it got better before taking her to the doctor. She'd fallen out of Nicholas's truck. She'd been hit with a baseball bat. She'd bumped her head on the stairs. Just accidents. Just bad luck. Just a clumsy kid. But investigators found Nicholas's explanations kept changing. First, he said Isabella hit her face on the asphalt when she fell from the truck. Then he changed his story. She'd put her hands down and broken her fall, not hitting her face. He said he worked so much he was hardly ever home and couldn't explain Isabella's injuries. But Andrea told a different story. She described Nicholas as being present, violent, controlling. When confronted by detectives, Nicholas tried to blame Andrea, saying it was her idea to wait before calling 911, her idea to run. Andrea disputed this, telling investigators Nicholas wanted to bury the body and flee. Hard truth. What's clear is that both parents prioritized their own freedom over getting help for their dying daughter. And that's why both now face first-degree murder charges. But here's the question that haunts this entire case. How did Isabella suffer for years without anyone intervening? In the days and weeks after Isabella's death, the community of Cold Springs was outraged, not just at Nicholas and Andrea Loving, but at the system that failed to protect this child. Ashley Viney, a Reno therapist who knew Isabella, told reporters she had made many reports to CPS and nothing was done when this could have been prevented. Viney described Isabella as a really beautiful, intelligent, and smiley girl whose demeanor changed dramatically over time. Quote, "I'd say from age 3 it went down from that. Every instance of seeing her, she just looked scared." Let that statement sit. Another community member, Linny Niederkorn, expressed frustration. "I know people had reached out and talked to CPS, and the case was shut down, and there's a lot of outrage about that." Multiple people had reported concerns about Isabella's welfare. Multiple people saw warning signs, and CPS investigated and then closed the case. Now, I want to be clear about something. We don't have all the details of that CPS investigation. Those records are confidential, and they may remain sealed even after the criminal trials. But we know a few critical facts. 1. Nicholas Loving had a prior conviction for child abuse. This was public record. CPS would have known about it during any home investigation. 2. Court documents show the parents had an in-home safety plan with CPS, but the children were never removed from the home. 3. Community members reported seeing Isabella with visible bruises, including in a photo taken at Disneyland just 2 weeks before her death. 4. Isabella had been pulled from school for a year, yet there's no indication anyone followed up on truancy. After Isabella's death, protesters gathered to demand accountability, not just for Nicholas and Andrea Loving, but for the social workers assigned to the case. They're calling for Isabella's Law, legislation that would mandate more frequent welfare checks and random home visits in cases where parents have prior child abuse convictions. Leslie Berg from Safe Embrace, a Reno nonprofit that helps victims of domestic violence, put it this way. Domestic violence is something that we always have in our mind. All of our advocates are always working to break and end that cycle of domestic violence. But they can only break cycles when they know about them. Isabella was hidden, isolated, locked in a closet while the world moved on around her. And by the time anyone could help her, it was too late. On April 7, 2024, 4 days after Isabella's death, Nicholas Loving was arrested and charged with 1 count of child abuse causing substantial bodily harm. His bail was set at $10 million cash. If he somehow posted bail, the conditions were strict: home confinement, ankle monitor, GPS tracking limited to Washoe County, and absolutely no contact with his wife Andrea or their 4 remaining children, all of whom were immediately placed in CPS custody. 4 months later, on August 7, 2024, the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office released their findings. Cause of death: bacterial pneumonia. But, and this is critical, the medical examiner ruled Isabella's death a homicide, noting that blunt force injuries, severe malnutrition, dehydration, and medical neglect were all significant contributing factors. That same day, prosecutors upgraded Nicholas Loving's charge to murder. For months, the community demanded, why isn't Andrea charged with murder? She was initially arrested on July 29, 2024, on child abuse charges. Her bail was set at $5 million, but prosecutors held off on murder charges until they gathered more evidence. On December 23, 2024, 8 months after Isabella's death, the Washoe County District Attorney's Office made a major announcement. Andrea Loving was formally charged with first-degree murder. Washoe County District Attorney Chris Hicks released a statement. The loss of Isabella Loving continues to weigh heavily on our community and everyone in my office. As this case continues to move forward, the facts uncovered only reinforce the seriousness of what occurred and the responsibility we have to pursue justice for Izzy. With the benefit of additional evidence and continued investigative efforts by our law enforcement, my office has expanded the charges against Andrea Loving to reflect the nature and extent of her actions. Both Nicholas and Andrea Loving have waived their preliminary hearings in Reno Justice Court. Their cases have been bound over to 2nd Judicial District Court. Preliminary hearings for both parents are scheduled for February 6, 2026. Both face first-degree murder charges. Both face potential life sentences. And Isabella's 3 surviving siblings remain in protective custody, beginning the long process of healing from trauma that will likely affect them for the rest of their lives. Isabella Loving was 5 years old when she died. If she were alive today, she'd be 6.5. She'd be in 1st grade. She'd be learning to read chapter books, making friends, discovering who she wanted to be. Instead, she spent the final 2 years of her life locked in a closet, starved, beaten with steel-toe boots, and denied medical care by the 2 people who were supposed to protect her above all others. This case isn't just about 2 parents who failed their daughter. It's about a system that had multiple opportunities to intervene, and didn't. It's about a community that saw warning signs and made reports, but those reports didn't lead to action. It's about mandatory reporters, CPS caseworkers, school officials, and neighbors who all play a role in protecting vulnerable children. If this case affected you, and I hope it did, I want you to know how you can make a difference. First, learn the signs of child abuse. According to the CDC, 1 in 7 children experienced abuse or neglect in the past year. Warning signs include unexplained or frequent injuries, extreme withdrawal from social situations, fear of going home, poor hygiene or inappropriate clothing, sudden changes in behavior, not attending school regularly. Second, if you see something, report it. In Nevada, anyone can report suspected child abuse to the Child Protective Services hotline. You don't need proof, just reasonable suspicion. Reports can be made anonymously, and they can save lives. Third, support organizations working to protect children. I've linked several child advocacy groups in the description. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Child Help National Child Abuse, Hotline, 1-800-4A, Child CASA. Court-appointed special advocates, Safe Embrace, serving the Reno area. Here at True Crime Buff HQ, we're committed to seeking justice for the voiceless. That means telling Isabella's story the way it deserves to be told, with dignity, with accuracy, and with a commitment to preventing these tragedies in the future. Isabella Loving deserved better. Her siblings deserved better. Every child deserves a safe home, adequate food, medical care, and parents who protect them. We'll continue following this case through trial. We'll continue advocating for stronger child protection laws. And we'll continue honoring Isabella's memory by demanding accountability from her parents and from the systems that failed her. This is True Crime Buff HQ, seeking justice for the voiceless. Isabella's preliminary hearing is February 6, 2026. We'll be watching.